Hello, everyone. I'm Avantika. I work with the City of Boston Zero Waste team. We work on a bunch of different things, starting from collection, disposal, programs for residents, and policymaking. This here you can see is a list of services that we provide to the residents. Our team focuses only on residential services, so we do not work with large organizations, big buildings, commercial entities. We only collect from residents. So we have zero sort recycling, which began in 2008 and led to an increased participation. We used to have a dual stream earlier, but we noticed that there was less participation in that program. And when we went to zero sort recycling, that significantly shot up from 5% to I think we are at 25% now. We have leaf and yard waste composting. We have food waste collection. We also have community waste drop-off bins, which are large bins that are allocated for particular neighborhoods, and you can just take your stuff there and put it in there. We have clothing and textile recovery, which is we take waste clothing and our vendors go and recycle it, donate it to a lot of other industry partners. We have mattress recycling, and we also have events such as the Zero Waste Days and pop-ups where you can get a whole bunch of different kind of waste items ranging from electronics, hazardous waste, paper shredding, tires, all kinds of things that you cannot get rid of in your normal, scheduled pickup. And then we also have a special item collection with CRD tubes and white goods. So just to walk you through what the history of waste policy has been in Boston, it is broadly dictated by the Massachusetts waste ban, under which all of our programs and policies kind of operate currently. The first ban was in 1990, which prohibited paper, glass, metal leaves, etc., all of that. And after that, we also had in 2022 textiles and mattresses that were added as part of the amended waste ban. In 2019, this is a proactive thing that the city did. We were not required to do that. We had a zero waste plan in which we did an analysis of what's in our waste, how can we reduce it, what are the different strategies that we can do in the short term and long term to reduce our waste and help improve diversion. In 22, again, we launched an organics program, which is not part of the mass waste ban, but the city wanted to do this, and we have vendors that now collect our curbside waste and also the community bins that I just spoke about. And then we have the waste drop-off items that I spoke in the previous slide. So this is what the structure looks like. When the waste ban happened, we had to go from just picking up trash and recycle to adding capability to collect all the other items that were part of the ban. As a result, we added 8 new vendors, which helped the industry innovate and come up with more such services. All our material is recycled, recovered, or reused. Our trash is sent to a waste-to-energy facility, and Boston uses no landfill for its residential waste. As part of the zero waste plan, we have all of these were recommendations of the zero waste plan that we implemented, which is the organics collection program, creating more green jobs that help us scale up our operations and increase the number of educational events such as drop-offs, fix-it clinics. We even have a recycling database that if you're not able to make it to any of these events, you can look up on the Boston website and find a recycling drop-off center close to you and go there. So we have a lot of resources focused on helping residents figure out how they can recycle better and segregate their waste better, but also supplementing that with capabilities that help you do that. A third bit is our sanitary code, which kind of dictates how you should be doing trash. It's not really so much part of our policy, but things like how you should be storing your trash, where you should not be dumping, and how you do that for large buildings. Recycling is significantly different for large buildings. So here's a graph from our zero waste research, and you can see that it's an interesting, data set to just kind of look at where residential waste lies in comparison to commercial, and see the large volume of that comes through commercial, and there's a lot of room in both spaces to kind of add more policy measures to help reduce our volumes that go into waste and increase that recycling and compost as compared to the trash. This is a very unique situation in Boston, and we thought that it'll be interesting for you to know, given that Boston is a student-heavy city. We have a lot of move-in and move-out, and mattresses tend to create a lot of, burden on the waste operations, particularly during move-in day. And this is a real picture from one of our locations when we had some of them may have been, called in through our mattress collection requests, but many of them are just dumped, and the trash team has to pick them up because if it's illegally dumped, it still becomes our burden to pick it up. And here are the mattress recycling numbers. You can see that during the move-in time from August to September, we have a significant uptick in the number of mattresses collected. This year, I think it was 18% in just a 2-week time, where we collected most of our mattresses. Overall, from June to October, we had about 20,000 mattresses collected. These are scheduled pickups. And this is a picture of our textile bin. So if you want to be able to dispose of your textiles responsibly, we have these blue bins with the pink sticker on there that you can use to put in your clothing and other things that you're not using. We have 30-odd drop-off bins. You can even schedule a curbside collection at home if you wanted to do that. And these are our textiles by the number. I think May this year at about one of the highest volumes, but you can see that there is a bit of seasonality here as well. In FY 2024, we have about 900,000 pounds of textile collected through this program. Sure.
Where do the textiles go?
Where do they go? Good question. And we actually have a vendor that pays us to collect the textiles. So there's clearly an industry that they supply to. A lot of it would go into donation boxes to shops. But a lot of it, which just cannot be reused, is sent for insulation, a lot of other things that could use just like rags, and literally that has no life left in it. This is our food waste collection. I think this is one of the things that our team internally is very excited about. We have new bins that we're setting up every now and then. We have grants helping us do that. Project Oscar is what we call it internally. It's the community waste bins. It began in 2014 in East Boston and one in North End. And then 2015, we had 3 additional bins in Brighton, JP, Grove Hall. And the bins were originally placed by the mayor's office of New Urban Mechanics. Food waste composted outside of Boston is done by our vendor called Black Earth Composting. In 24, we have 14 locations and about 250 tons of food waste collected through this program. Curbside food waste is different, as in that you can just take your bin, roll it out, and all your food waste gets collected as part of our normal collection. This began in 22 as a pilot, and the goal was to add 10,000 households. For each year of the pilot, in 23, we collected about 1,500 tons of food waste. Our partnership is with Garbage to Garden and Save That Stuff, who collect, dispose, and then process this. And currently, we are at about 24,000 participants in this program. Again, it's voluntary. This is not something that's required of a resident, but we see that many neighborhoods were very excited about this program, and we see continued interest, volume, participation in this program since it's been launched. That's it for me. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Any comments, any feedback?
Is there a fee for the compost?
Is there
A fee for residents?
No, it's a free program. Yeah.
Something comes to mind in New York, I think, and there might be others as well, it's called Fab Scrap.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this really cool place where it collects textiles
Okay.
from everywhere. And there's a volunteer program
Okay.
that allows people to come in and help sort out that's their takeaway, so they help with the sorting. So I just wonder if there's a program that maybe could do something along those lines.
Do you know if it's run by the city or is it like a
It's a nonprofit,
nonprofit? Okay.
but it's an interesting.
It's a great idea. Yeah, I think,
It's called Fab Scrap.
right. We can make a note of it and like, we have ideas being exchanged in the team. But yeah, it would be interesting to see something like this happen in Boston.
These are incredible programs, so thank you so much for getting us all up to speed on what exists in the city. Hear a little bit about the engagement.
Mm-hmm.
That complements a lot of these efforts.
Very great, very good question. Constant discussion in our team. So we have one of our experts who runs the programs for the residents. But I can tell you that we have a lot of mailers and booklets that literally take you through every possible waste material you may have and how you can get, how you can dispose of it. We constantly have events throughout the week. We were just talking about a pumpkin smash where, you take that. We have farmers market where we give out free compost. We have a lot of other compost events where our vendors will bring all of their processed compost and give it away for free. We have fix-it clinics where you can go and repair your stuff if you wanted to do that. And to your point about the vendors, so we are engaged with our recyclers. They're able to literally show us what happens to our waste at the end of its life cycle and how can we improve resident behavior through better segregation, for example. Like if you have a less contaminated load, it takes much less time, resources to separate out the stuff which then gets sold off to a lot of other industry players. But they're constantly telling us how we can communicate what district level behaviors can be changed on basis of what they're observing as they receive the trash loads and the recycle loads in their facility. So we have ongoing conversations and trying to rope in all the intelligence that our vendors have to ultimately just put it in an easy to understand format, because waste is not easily understood. Like it takes a while to even understand what goes in the recycle bin, what goes in compost, what goes in trash, right? So we have to drill it down, make it easy for residents to understand, then print it out, do outreach programs. We have a lot of social media engagement. If you follow our Instagram handles, you'll see a lot of information on those handles about what you can do, what resources there are, what are the events that the city is doing for all these kind of things.
How was composting determined to be the correct solution for food waste? Were any other technology solutions considered other than composting?
Do you have anything else in mind that you're talking about?
Well, one that I particularly know is using, food waste could be used to create bacterial cellulose, which is a much more valuable product than just compost. And that can be then used for actually making products rather than just being spread on the ground.
Right. I think this is a technical question for researchers and academia that have worked on this and established that compost is one of the best use for food waste. But to your point, we've had people reach out and talk about how they can convert food waste into a polymer that can be used, reused, sent back into the cycle. But I think there are a lot of challenges in understanding material and emission footprint through the life cycle of any object or item. And research still kind of lagging behind telling one option versus the other, and how do those compare in terms of waste generated or emissions generated. So I think it's still work in progress, but so far the city works on evidence and what our researchers have been telling us, and we use that as a way to formulate our plans. Um, yeah. So let it go to trash.
I'm sorry?
Not recycle, then let it go to
So the
trash.
energy, yes.
I don't know, like, what the source of this is, and I don't want to give an uneducated answer to that, but operationally, we have the same vendor that goes and picks up trash. If the volume remains the same, it's only a matter of which truck it is going to or what day it is going to, because the trucks are filling up every day and taking as much as they can. So
Right, but you have to have.
no, it's actually the same fleet that services. For us, that's true. I cannot speak on behalf of other cities, but for us, we have the same vendor that does both recycling and trash.
Same vendor, but it's not.
It's the same
I
fleet.
don't know anywhere else.
It's a complex question to answer, but either way, I've not seen any evidence to suggest that recycle and trash should be done together as a way to improve street operations.
Well, think
It's different days.
about, right, yeah.
Mhm.
And the second time is just.
I get your point, but I'll leave you just with just one thought is that if you have the same volume and you fill up one truck, then you might have to send another one anyway to pick that up. So, your question. Business case for the city?
Yeah, like, why do you make it free?
I don't think the city is planning to make money out of this. It's a free program and it's a costly program. But I don't think the idea here is for the city to have a revenue model through that. The whatever revenue is earned through the compost belongs to the vendors who do it for us. So from the city's perspective, it is purely an environmental endeavor.
Okay.
No. I think internally the culture is very climate environment friendly in the city. I don't know what other cities' challenges have been with budgeting on an issue like this, but I do know that a lot of them would run a pay-as-you-throw program that helps them fund this operation. And Boston culturally, I think, is not open to having that. We've been doing this, we care about it. The city allocates budget for all of these services, and yeah, I guess it's a culture difference.
Oh, if the city of Boston ever reaches out to other cities to understand what they're doing, even though it's different contexts, just to learn from new ideas.
We do that all the time.
Yeah.
Yes,
Is there any
yes.
city in particular that's inspires
Um,
your team?
So many cities doing so many different things, but we see New York as our closest parallel, even though the city structure is completely different from ours. But they have similar urban infrastructure, similar diversity of residents, very closely following their containerization endeavor, their food waste program. And there's like a constant knowledge exchange between us in New York, but also a lot of other Massachusetts cities that come together. We also connect with global cities, Europe, Australia, talk about all the kind of different things that are happening in that world and how the industry is different there, how policies are different. So yeah, it's a great learning process. Do we have time for one more?
Unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions because we have 2 more speakers this evening. But there will be an additional Q&A at the end of the evening, as well as you have a chance to mingle and talk with each other at the end of the night to keep discussing these topics. So thank you, Avantika. So next up, I'm getting the technology set up here, and we have Sylvia Muñoz, who is in Spain. She actually spent some time in Cambridge with us in the summer and joined some of our club meetings. But she's going to be talking in the recorded video some about the European policy context and what can we learn or get inspiration from, what differences are there, what's kind of happening in Europe. And I'm going to play a video of her because it's something like 1 a.m. in Spain, so there's no way for her to attend on Zoom. But let me make sure this is all set.
Today with you on a recorded video because here is around 1 a.m. Hi everyone, this is Sylvia Muñoz, founder and director of Advocacy, a consultancy service in circular economy. I was living for a few months in Cambridge earlier this year, but I'm based in Bilbao in the Basque Country in the north of Spain. That's why I'm today with you on a recorded video because here is around 1 a.m. Thanks so much to the Circular Economy Club for calling me into this event, and a special greeting to my colleagues at today's session. I hope we can meet in person soon. First of all, I would like to point out that the European vision for the transition from a linear economy to a circular economy is based on an instrumental framework to facilitate this transition, as well as on the coordinated activity between administrations, economic sectors, and society as a whole. In 2011 and 2014, the EU publishes some communications regarding resource scarcity and waste generation. And it's in December 2015 when EU presents its circular economy package under the slogan "Closing the Loop," with the fundamental goal of promoting the transition to the circular economy, contributing the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and the fight against climate change. The EC framework standard led by Europe is the European Action Plan for the Circular Economy. The first action plan took the form of 54 measures. For example, introducing circularity criteria in the Eco-Design Directive, criteria for green public procurement, or specific waste reduction targets, such as reducing packaging by 75% by 2030. The new action plan of March the 11th in 2020 include product design, making sustainable products the norm in the EU, empowerment of consumers because we as consumers have the power to put into the market the sustainable goods we ask for, circularity of production processes, regions and cities, leading global CE efforts, focus on sectors that use the most resources and where the potential for circularity is the highest. They are the construction sector, textile, electronics, batteries and vehicles, packaging, plastics, and food and water. Follow-up reports are required and published because to get better, we need to measure how we are doing things. The last update of the monitoring framework was in May the 15th in 2023. It includes some new very interesting indicators such as material dependency that measures the share of imported materials in overall material use, details how much the EU depends on material imports, and reflects the contribution of the circular economy to the security of material and energy supply. And many more legislation that are developed from the package of CE measures that make this European circular regulatory framework, such as some strategies, for example, like plastic strategy, some directives associated with the plan, like waste, packaging, end-of-life vehicles, batteries, electronic equipment, single-use plastics directive in 2019. From July the 3rd in 2021, the manufacture and sale of single-use plastics is completely banned in Europe. The Sustainable Products Directive, and the most recent one, the right to repair, that I will explain a little bit more later on. The European Green Deal is Europe's new growth strategy. It's the European roadmap for a sustainable economy. This deal will require transforming climate and environmental challenges into opportunities. It also seeks to make the transition just and inclusive for all, leaving no one behind. Its essential objective is a climate-neutral Europe by 2050, or in other words, net neutral greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. This action plan deal is divided into 9 areas, of which the CE is the center of 2. At the European level, CE is also present in the Sustainable Development Goals. CE is the core of the goal number 12, which is responsible production and consumption. And for all of this, money is needed, right? For the fulfillment of its action plans, the EU makes available all the financial instruments at its disposal. For example, the Cohesion Policy Funds dedicates resources to promote the circular economy at regional level. The European Fund for Strategic Investments, or the European Investment Bank, also contribute to finance the development of projects in the field of circular economy. Regarding investment, financing, and public procurement, sustainability and circular economy indexes already determine to a large extent the financing and investment capacity of organizations in Europe. The increase in their importance in the last decade is estimated at 75%. The Spanish circular economy strategy includes, for instance, circularity criteria to be included in the specifications for the presentation of funding proposal of projects for public contracts with the administration. Also in non-financial reports, sustainable reports. Over the last few years, more and more companies have started to report on their circular economy strategy, initiatives, and performance. For the 49,000 biggest companies in Europe, this will become mandatory in 2024 as a result of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive of the European Commission, which will enforce, among others, a reporting standard on circular economy and resource use. As a result, many companies in Europe will have to develop new corporate strategies, face data gaps, and introduce new tools and processes to their organizations. This directive is the world's first mandatory standard to report on circular economy strategy and performance. Currently, the reporting standards that have been developed by the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group are still drafts being discussed by the European Commission, its member states, and the European Parliament. The circular economy standard is one of these standards still in draft form. This reporting will fight against the greenwashing together with the European Green Taxonomy Regulation published in July 2020, which is based on the criteria of the European Green Deal, the Paris Agreement, and the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a classification system for economic activities that are socially and environmentally sustainable to allow companies, investors, and regulators to obtain more accurate and truthful information on the activities that contribute to the achievement of environmental goals. And as we are here in Circular Cities Week, there are already many regions and cities that have their circular economy strategies, like Slovenia, Denmark, France, and the Netherlands, which especially stand out. The Spanish Circular Economy Strategy was published in 2020, and the first action plan ends next year. In cities standing out, we find London, Paris, Brussels, Glasgow, and Maribor, and recently joined this list is Bilbao with its municipal circularization plan. Well, now we are going to see the last directive approved, the right to repair. As a part of the Sustainable Products Initiative and midway between the new eco-design regulation and consumer empowerment rules, the Right to Repair Directive was published on July 10, 2024, and aims to facilitate a more competitive market for choosing repair over the purchase of new goods and products. The aim is to prevent consumers from prematurely discarding goods that are still useful and can be used for a longer period of time. Many factors and barriers influence the consumer's decision. The directive covers the following aspects: the obligation for manufacturers to provide repair services and the right for manufacturers to repair products that are technically repairable, the obligation for repairers to submit, upon request, a binding quotation including price and repair conditions in a standardized format, the obligation for member states to set up a national platform to put consumers in contact with repairers, the extension of the period of responsibility of the seller in case of repair to 12 months. The first product categories to be affected by this new regulation are the following: washing machines, tumble dryers and washer dryers, dishwashers, refrigerators and vacuum cleaners, electronic displays and tablets, cell phones, servers and data storage products, and welding equipment. Now I'm going to play for you a video of the Victoria City Council in the Basque Country regarding this directive. Hope you enjoy it.
Detrás de un modelo de consumo basado en usar y tirar, se ocultan montañas de residuos y recursos naturales agotados. Si tú no eres cómplice, si reparas tus cosas para alargar su vida útil, eres un rebelde con causa. Eres un componder. Repara para seguir brillando. Repara para seguir saboreando. Repara para seguir disfrutando. Repara para seguir emocionando. Repara para seguir avanzando. Dale la vuelta. Tú decides qué relación quieres tener con la naturaleza. Casi todo se puede arreglar. Hazlo. Revélate y repara. Hazte Componder. Proyecto Compondu.
That's one of the many initiatives that the Right to Repair Directive has inspired. So, to summarize in some key words this European policy framework, I would say collaboration between administration, companies and the society as a whole. We need to work together. Eco-design to provide circularity mechanisms to preserve the value of the resources such as reuse, collaborative use, remanufacturing, recycling. Key sectors such as textiles, construction, electronics, batteries, and plastics, fight planned obsolescence and greenwashing, and promote consumer empowerment. The last one, fight for the right to repair. And here I will end. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you have found this time with you interesting and useful. It has been a real pleasure for me, and here is my contact where you can reach me if you want to. And yeah, enjoy these Circular Cities weekdays and looking forward to see you soon. Thank you and bye bye.
Awesome. So super inspiring to hear what's going on in Europe, especially this last video on the right to repair. It has me thinking about what could a campaign look like in the city of Boston to influence and change the culture around repair in our city. I think also of note in the video is the whole country of Spain having a circular economy strategy that is published and acting on, and then a report the next year. These are things that would be amazing to have for our city, for our state, for our whole country, and really thinking about things at not just a local level, but at a state and federal level as well, for really driving circular economy in a strategic and well thought out way. So there's lots of potential and things to learn from what's going on in Europe, as well as there's some exciting things happening here in our state, in Massachusetts. And the policy is moving forward, and we have some amazing leaders working on this locally as well that are putting in time and effort to go to Europe and kind of understand what's going on there, go to other regions of the world, and really think about how do we reduce waste and think about product design and all of these opportunities for innovation. So I am going to switch. I'm doing speaking and technical logistics at the same time here, so please bear with me. I'm going to switch our presentation over, and I'm going to introduce our next speaker. So I'm delighted to introduce Representative Michelle Sicolo as our keynote speaker for Circular Cities Week. Michelle Sicolo is a state representative for the 15th Middlesex District in Massachusetts, which includes most of the town of Lexington and parts of Woburn and Winchester. In early 2020, Sicolo co-founded the bipartisan Zero Waste Caucus, which works to reduce and eliminate solid waste in Massachusetts through legislative action, state and local collaboration, information gathering, education, and public outreach. So really excited to have Michelle here with us this evening.
Thank you, Eric, and thanks to all of you for being here tonight. Oh, we need to get the presentation up. What a great group of people. I am just thrilled that you have a club, and Eric, thank you so much for your work and efforts organizing and founding the club and keeping it running. So as Eric said, I'm State Representative Michelle Sicolo. I'm from the 15th Middlesex District, and my district does include there we go. Does include Lexington, most of Lexington, part of Woburn, and a piece of Winchester. And one of the reasons I really got involved in waste reduction issues is because I had such local activism in my community. Parents that founded green teams that went into the schools, that did composting in the schools, Girl Scouts that brought bylaws to town meeting to ban straws and polystyrene and plastic bags. I mean, just a tremendous amount of energy in my community. And so they say that representatives reflect their district. And I think I am definitely a reflection of the passion that I have in my local community. So I founded the Zero Waste Caucus in 2019, a year after I joined the legislature with Senator Jason Lewis, who was from Winchester. He and I continue to co-chair the caucus. Before that, there was not really any kind of a focus on waste reduction at all. There were lots of individual bills, not many, but most of the bills hadn't made much progress forward because it just wasn't a focus. And we had done a lot of environmental bills on energies and other large policy frameworks for carbon reduction, but we hadn't really dug into waste. So we have 57 legislators now, which is incredibly exciting. And we are bicameral and bipartisan, which really helps. And every year we go through a process where we actually ask all of the legislators that are in the caucus to send us their bills. And then we ask to have a vote on which should be the top priorities. It's not going to surprise you when I tell you that the top 3 priorities that have for the past several years have been the bottle bill, expanding and improving the bottle bill, single-use plastics reduction, and EPR bills. This year, we also added some truth in labeling bills for food labeling as a top priority. But because we have a 2-year cycle in the legislature, we actually have to go through this process every 2 years. We have to re-up our membership and file with the House clerk so that we are an official caucus. And as Eric said, these are the things we do in terms of education, regulatory oversight, information gathering, public outreach, that kind of thing. These are our reps and senators that are in the caucus right now. If you want to look up your own rep and senator after the fact, you can go to my personal website, michellesocolo.com. Under my priorities is a link for the Zero Waste Caucus, and you can always check. And come next year, when we start a new session in January, we'll have the new leaders up by probably February or March, because we go through that process in the beginning of the session. And we do have a statement of purpose. We're highly strategic. We really try to make sure that we know what we are focusing on, and we have meetings about every 6 weeks where we have guest speakers that are national experts in the field. Sometimes we do tours with the environmental committee. We did visit a mattress recycling facility and a MRF. So those kinds of things are really helpful to get our members really up to speed about the way things are working and what's going on in the real world. So now we have about 78 pieces of legislation filed each session, which is kind of remarkable. And because of the energy of the caucus, we've had more bills reported out favorably than ever before. I sit on the environmental committee, and many of the bills go to the environmental committee. They also go to TUE, the Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Committee. But those 2 bills are the majority. Those 2 committees handle the majority of our bills. And so we were thrilled. The bottle bill used to be a third rail issue. You may know that it was originally passed in Massachusetts in 1982, and we haven't changed it since. And the 5-cent deposit has been the same amount since 1982. At one time, we had halfway decent redemption rates, but we are now at 38% redemption, which is the worst in the country. Actually, the worst in the world for redemption rates. And that's largely because we don't charge enough of a fee, and because we trained everybody to do curbside recycling so effectively, which really, it's great when recycling is meaningful and working, but we all know that so much of our plastic stream is not actually being recycled. More often it's being burned and incinerated and buried. So in 2014, there was a ballot question to expand the bottle bill, and it failed spectacularly. And that is one of the reasons why the bottle bill has been considered to be a third rail, but the conditions then were very different. Back in 2014, cities and towns actually came out against expanding the bottle bill and changing it because they were afraid they would not get as many as much revenue from the actual recycling stream. It used to be a moneymaker, and now it is a money burden. Massachusetts has the highest tipping fees in the country. It's over $122 per ton. And that's a figure from a couple of years ago. I think I heard it's gone up by 25% or more since then. So very high fees, and that includes our recycling stream. So other things in legislation that are really important for you to hear about, the economic development bond bill, which we expect will get passed this fall, despite the fact that we all took a legislative hiatus after formal session ended July 31st. We are coming back in for a formal vote on the bond bill, and we are also going to do the climate bill at that time. So you're probably reading about all of this in the news. We are very excited, but there's significant funding in the economic development bill for climate tech, as we're calling it. And some of that money we expect can and will be hopefully used for investments in the circular economy. I personally had a lot of conversations with Secretary Howe and her staff and asked her to make sure she didn't forget about the importance of catalyzing small businesses and investments to be able to build the technology to do more circular things, especially reuse and refill, and all of the types of investments we would have to make that viable. So you see that there are tax credits as well in the bond bill, and I think, and the opportunity to do research in this area as well. So this didn't lay out quite right. I don't know why it's wrapping like that, but next session, we are going to go through the same process to make sure we prioritize our top pieces of legislation. And I would imagine that the bottle bill will be one of those pieces, as will EPR bills and the single-use plastics. Chairman Becca Rausch, who's the senator on for the Environmental Committee on the Senate side, has really prioritized the single-use plastics reduction. She did release a bill that was engrossed in the Senate but did not make it to the floor. Other pieces of legislation that we are looking at, and some of these are bills that colleagues have told me they're interested in. Other of these are my bills that I may be filing. We're still refining them. We have to reintroduce all of our bills in January of every 2-year session. So every 2 years, we start over, we dust off the bills, we improve upon them, and we refine them, and in some cases, submit new bills. So I'm actually thinking about doing some fees on single-use disposables, so water bottles and coffee cups and things that you use for, 30 seconds for an hour or less, and then throw out. Those are things that I think could benefit from having maybe a penny fee on each of them. I don't have any illusions that this would go very far in the legislature, at least not this first session. But I think it's important to start the conversation about the fact that these things should not be free and should not be disposed of in such a cavalier fashion. If we did get a fee for disposables, it would be used to invest in refill systems and reuse and recycling. And that would be a great opportunity for a dedicated stream of revenue that really could help move the needle on some of these ideas that we're talking about. We heard earlier about textile collections. It's really interesting, these boxes that are all over our communities. We often don't know where they're going, who's picking them up, how much is being collected. And even though we have a waste ban on textiles in Massachusetts, we don't have a good handle on how much we're really collecting as a Commonwealth. And so one of the things that we may file as a piece of legislation is the requirement that people register those boxes and then give us an annual report as to how much they collected and where they sent it. So we know that it's not ending up in a different landfill out of state, for instance. I think 35% of our waste in Massachusetts is exported out of state, often to other people's EJ communities, and it's really not fair that we are not handling our own waste within our state, and it's something that we have to really keep our eye on from an equity and fairness perspective. Dishwashers in new schools. We have a number of new schools in Lexington and schools that are only 3 or 4 years old, and this year I had to get a grant to help them try to install dishwashers in 2 of the schools because they weren't built with dishwashers. We got away from using reusable trays and silverware and all those kinds of things because it was cheaper and easier to do cardboard or polystyrene trays and toss them out. And our community is really saying no to that. We had to go, the parents and the kids together went to the school department and the school committee and lobbied to get rid of the polystyrene trays, and they've been very successful in bringing reusables back into the schools, but we need to be able to wash things. And I don't think Massachusetts should help any school be built or any community build a school without requiring it to have a dishwasher. So that would be one of the bills that I might file. Truth in labeling for recyclables and compostables. So many of the things you see now, they are not clearly compostable, and it's not identified whether it can be safe, whether it has PFAS in it, whether you can put it in your curbside or your own backyard composting facility. We need to know as consumers what we're buying and how we can properly dispose of things. So I think that's another bill that would be really helpful. And tax credits for food donations. Right now, there is a ban on organics. I think you all know that we had a 1-ton ban, and now it's down to a 1/2 ton. So organizations that produce more than 1/2 ton of organics per week have to compost that. And Massachusetts has seen tremendous progress. We've gone from about 24% of the waste stream down to about 20% of the waste stream. And we were just recognized by a study done by, I think, the University of Texas for the amazing amount of carbon reduction, methane reduction primarily because of our successful program. So that is the good news. We, I think, are now composting 380,000 tons a year in Massachusetts and saving 3,300 tons of methane from going into the atmosphere every year because of the composting facilities. We have a long way to go. 20% of the waste stream is still organics that could be recycled, but DEP is fining people, if they're not complying. They're helping educate, they're providing grants, and they're doing they're very aggressive in helping us come into compliance with the organics waste ban, and that is a very exciting and positive step forward. But we're a little behind on the PFAS bans. I was shocked to see that the state of New Hampshire passed a PFAS ban before us. We did manage to have a ban of PFAS in firefighter turnout gear at the end of last session. At the current session we're in, we did pass that, but we haven't gone any further. And we know that quite a few of our water systems in Massachusetts do have PFAS contamination. I don't remember the exact number of communities, but it's at least 70, but it may be double that. It's a significant number of communities that are seeing PFAS in their water. And EPA just changed the standards, made it more stringent, which is the good news, to lower the acceptable levels of PFAS that can be in our drinking water. Most of that PFAS is coming from the incineration of plastics and the burying of plastics in waste facilities and from the manufacturing of plastics. So let's see if I remember this. We have 6 million tons of waste in Massachusetts a year, and 1 ton is plastics. So it's a pretty significant part of our waste stream. So we're also looking at EPR, extended producer responsibility policies for foodware, like takeout containers in restaurants, textiles, clothing, for instance, with a fee that would require the manufacturer to help us recover those materials when they're no longer able to be used, and tires. So why does waste matter, and why do we pursue these strategies? You all know this information. This is just a nice slide that reminds us that we often measure only the carbon in our jurisdiction. We don't consider the upstream or downstream carbon impacts of what we consume. And very rarely do we do a consumption-based carbon analysis in our planning documents. But if we looked at all of the manufacturing that goes into our products and all of the end-of-life disposal, it's far more significant than the carbon we burn by our buildings and our cars and our trains, our transportation system. So that's called Scope 3 emissions. And that's something that we all need to begin wrapping our brains around and studying and really analyzing sort of what the impact is, because that may prove to be worse than heating our buildings and traveling in single occupancy vehicles. And why is waste one of my top priorities? Again, these are things that you all probably intuitively know, but it's a matter of environmental justice. 4 out of 5 of our incinerators in Massachusetts are in environmental justice neighborhoods. And the rest of our waste that gets exported generally goes to other people's environmental justice neighborhoods. We understand that it has a significant carbon impact, especially methane, which is far more potent as a greenhouse gas because of the way it warms the earth at a faster rate than carbon emissions could directly. So methane is something that we really need to focus on. But the public health issue, that matter of PFAS in our water, of contamination and toxicity from all of the plastics that we use, are things that we can't lose sight of. It's very expensive and detrimental to our public health. But then finally, it's about economy and the jobs. There are great opportunities in the reuse and refill arena and waste reduction and recycling in general to really have local jobs, because those jobs have to be close to where the population density is. So I touched on all of these. It's about equity, emissions, toxicity, and public health. I think it's particularly interesting that 15,000 different chemicals are in plastics, and most of them are completely unregulated. Okay, so we have to get beyond the big R. This was from I used some of the slides from a former presentation. You all know that recycling is not the answer anymore. It's a piece of it, but it's a lot more about reducing and refusing, but really importantly, reusing. That's the one that I get the most excited about because I think that has the most upside potential to really be important for our economy and for creativity in how we approach this issue. So refill systems and reuse. Last year, I had the good fortune to go over to Europe and see a number of different facilities that were bottling and sorting and refilling, but also crate companies that do plastic crates for shipping food. I'm going to show you some of the pictures from that experience and some of the takeaways and the high-level things that we learned. We were with other legislators from Oregon, from Maine, from New York. It was an incredible, one of the NGOs, Reloop International, sponsored the trip and brought a number of legislators abroad to learn about this, and it was highly beneficial. So why reuse? 85% less emissions for single-use glass. Aluminum is 57%, and even reusing PET reduces emissions by 75%. So glass reusable, 75% less carbon than PET, and then switching 21 size schools to reusable foodware would reduce carbon emissions by 220 metric tons of CO2 per year. So thinking about where we have closed loop systems, where we actually could convert people back to the way things used to be done, is really, there's so many opportunities for this. We started researching this last fall in a senior living facility, 500 residents. If they use plastic for almost every single meal, because a lot of them get the meals brought to their units. They don't always go down to the dining hall. And if they do go down to the dining hall and they don't finish their meal, they take it home in plastic. And they're throwing that out day after day after day. And it's a real closed loop sort of captured environment where if we provided them with reusable packaging, they could not only save money, but save a tremendous amount of carbon and really reduce waste by a significant amount. So lessons learned from Germany, Brussels, and France. Really, my most exciting takeaway was that it really can be done. Before I left for the trip, I thought, this just seems so far-fetched and outside the possibility of what is something we could achieve here in the US. But there, they have high-functioning, market-driven systems. It actually is cost-effective for the beverage companies to use reusable bottles. They save money. The restaurants save money when they have silverware, and I'm going to give you some of these numbers. And consumers willingly and happily participated in it. Now, that's not necessarily the US, and we have a long way to go to change behavior. And that's one of my biggest concerns about what we would need to do here in the US to actually make these kinds of changes. But the other exciting thing was the local jobs in manufacturing and technology, warehousing, shipping, systems operations, tremendous amount of jobs. So here's some pictures. I'm going to scroll through the pictures pretty quickly. This is a water refill company, and the scale of this operation was mind-boggling. We walked through, as high as you could see of these systems, but the conveyor belts, the crates that shipped all of the bottles around, awesomely advanced, very robotics driven. And that's one of the things that gets me extremely excited is the robotics component, because Massachusetts is a leader in robotics and we want to continue to lead in that area. Really high-tech reverse vending machines. You think about the ones that we have here, and they're not well maintained and they're crowded and you're never quite sure if they're going to work when you bring your bottles back, if you bother to bring your bottles back, which most of us don't because it's only a 5-cent fee, right? And we have that curbside for many people and it's convenient. Toss it in the blue bucket and be done with it. But that is the most important stream of recycled content in terms of it being the most marketable, because it's not contaminated, it's clean. So if you return it through the bottle bill system, there are no bleach containers, there's no other toxic chemical plastic bottles in a single stream curbside system. Everything is mingled together. But in your beverage glass redemption system, it's all clean. So if you aren't already bringing your bottles back, please start bringing them back and trying to make an effort, because that is more marketable. The plastic and glass that comes out of those systems that are returned through the bottle deposit system has a higher value on the open market as a commodity. So here's some more pictures, back a house in a grocery store, that little conveyor belt. These are the crates that they actually buy beverages in, and that's one area I just don't see Americans being willing to take all these heavy crates home, but I think we can get around that. I think there's some ways to address that. This is, again, just a picture of the scale. This was a beer company. I think 57% of the beer is sold in reusables in Germany, which is pretty amazing. And they actually started their reusable system to compete, to make it less appealing to buy American beer or beer from other countries. It was a way of kind of cornering the market there originally. This is one of my favorites. The crating system that you're seeing here are crates that are washed. They're put in a centrifugal system so that they dry them. They are recovering the water when they're washing, and it's very low energy. And this is how they ship the vast majority of their produce. And then it doesn't have to be moved out of a carton. They don't have plastic lined cardboard boxes. They don't have wax coating, cardboard, because none of that stuff can actually, that paper doesn't get recycled. If it's coated, it gets thrown away. It can't really easily be recovered and recycled. So they're shipping things around in these crates, and the crates are used over and over again. If one breaks, they simply repair it. We walked through the whole factory. They showed us how they repair these things. And it's pretty gorgeous when you see this is a grocery store in Paris. And that's what it looks like. And I think, don't we want that? I mean, absolutely no waste, no cardboard boxes, and much easier on the grocery stores themselves. So, lessons learned from Europe. 54% of all single-serve beverages in Germany are sold through refill systems. That excludes, of course, dairy, and they don't do wine and spirits. But, I'm sorry, it was 87% of the beer, but the whole beverage system is 54%. Bottles can be used 40 times. They could actually be used more than 40 times, but they don't like the scuff mark that starts to appear from all the transporting them. PET can only be used 20 times, but it can be used 20 times. And most people say, well, we can't do this. It's going to waste so much water. But what people don't understand is that every bottle is usually washed. Even if it's brand new from the manufacturer, right before you fill it, you wash it and sanitize it because it's been in a warehouse. It's been on a truck. And so you get your bottles shipped to you, and even if they've never been used before, you wash them right before you fill them. So there's virtually no difference in the water consumption. So you can take that argument right off the table because water consumption is the same. And in Europe, they're achieving incredibly high redemption rates. I think I mentioned that we have the worst redemption rate in the world at 38%. You need to get to 90% before your systems are going to be cost effective. So we've got a long way to go at 38%. But they also have promulgated the new Circular Economy Action Plan and have specific EU targets by 2030. And they're aiming to be climate neutral by 2050. So they have a Directive 904 on single-use plastics. Europe is just way, way ahead of us in terms of policy that requires these systems to be supported and invested in. And this is where we need to go here in the US. But I thought this last bullet was really fascinating. There is a gentleman here in Massachusetts, if you don't know him yet, encourage him to join your organization, the Green Restaurant Association. He mentioned to me that all our restaurants put together, we would have the globe's 13th largest GDP in terms of the economic impact of all the restaurants in the US. So think about if we converted restaurants, just their activities, to not having disposable paper goods and plasticware. If they used reusable silverware, it would have a tremendous, tremendous impact. So jobs in small business. He was the person that said 100% of the time, if the restaurant converts to silverware and durable dishware, that they will always save money, and it's usually within a year. So if they're currently using disposables, it's about a year before it starts paying for itself. And they save a tremendous amount of money per year if they're going to reusables, and you can see the numbers. There are estimates that 193,000 jobs could be created in the near term if we did reuse in the US. I think that number is incredibly low because when you start to think about it's not all the moving of all the goods, it's a much larger endeavor. Takeaway food containers start paying for themselves in 3 to 4 years. So if you invest as a restaurant in a durable takeout food container, it pays for itself after 3 or 4 years. The transport packaging, like those crates that I was showing you, are 2 to 3 years before they're economically cost effective. And this is the one that I get really excited about. Most people think we can't invest in reuse systems in the US because it'd be too costly. But after 5 or 6 years, the beverage companies actually start saving money on the cost of the individual bottles because they've reused them so many times that there is a market-driven reason for them to do refillables. They'll tell you, no, we can't do that here, or it's not cost-effective. It's true, the upfront costs are significant. You know, millions and millions of dollars upfront would have to be invested in sorting and in washing and sanitizing and filling. But entirely doable if we actually change the paradigm that we operate in. Okay, so, okay. I think I told you need a 90% return rate before it's economically viable. So if you have too much loss in your system, then it's not cost effective at all for the bottling companies or the reusable food containers. You need 90% of the products to come back, otherwise it becomes too costly. I'm going to start skipping ahead a little since I don't have that much more time. So one of the things I get most excited about when I think about reuse and refill systems is that there are only 10 states in the country that have deposit return systems, and most of them are clustered on the East Coast and the West Coast. That means that in order to begin a reuse system, you have to be in a place where there's significant density and where you already have bottle redemption systems. Massachusetts could very much be a leader here, along with New York and Connecticut, if we actually work together with folks on the East Coast, because we have a mechanism to get the bottles back. But I get more excited about the fact that the jobs that get created are robotics, optics, very advanced optics, and high-tech advanced manufacturing for the facilities that would have to be built for all of this. And that's something that Massachusetts knows how to do. So lots of things that we could do to make reuse more viable. I think one of the most important things we could do is try to get the bottle bill, the expanded bottle bill, into the upcoming environmental bond bill, which is slated to be released in January or February. The administration is targeting very early next session. So watch for this and help us pass it. Talk to your legislators, because that's going to be a really important component. It's also very exciting that the unclaimed bottles deposit fees that we would be able to obtain will go to about $200 million a year. Right now, we have about $70 million a year in unclaimed bottle deposits. That's the bad news, because people aren't actually redeeming bottles. But the good news is if we expand to more bottles and more systems and improve our redemption rates, because the projection is that we'd get to about 70% redemption rates from the change by increasing the fee from 5 cents to 10 cents and then capturing more bottles, we'd still have about $130 million in new revenue, and that could be used to invest in clean water and in refill and reuse and recycling, all things environmental. We would actually have a catalyst for a new fund that could help us support some of these things. All right, so I'm not going to talk to you about the climate action plan because I'm just about out of time, but that's going on right now, and Massachusetts is planning along with 3 other planning regions, and Eric, maybe you can send the slides out. There are opportunities for public comment happening right now, and they are looking at the waste component of their climate action plan, and they have to finish this by 2025. So engage in these planning processes if you're interested in it, because this is how it happens. Okay, and where do we go from here? You all know that we need action on all 3 levels of government. We could use a federal bottle bill. I've mentioned a bunch of the state legislation, but keep doing what you've all been doing as well in your local communities, passing bylaws, passing ordinances, doing pilots for reuse and take-out food containers, et cetera. I'm just going to show you some pictures. Almost every city in Europe has a zero waste club or community, a zero waste plan as well, which is incredibly exciting. And this is how you can get in touch with me. So I don't know, there are some videos we could maybe show that were 10-second clips, but I don't know if that's too hard to do or not.
Probably go to
Q&A.
folks can watch them. Yeah.
colleagues and dear friends from Lexington, and I'm natural family. It makes me think a lot of Cambridge too, the city of Cambridge.
We call ourselves Cambridge West.
My question is on like a neighborhood approach to the circular economy. So I'm a consultant and I've worked in the past with the state of Haverhill, and it was so interesting to work with Argus because Haverhill is a different level of readiness, I guess, for different types of circular innovations. I learned so much by just learning that the community has different needs. So other municipalities and neighborhoods to be a part of this movement when there's clearly some differences in their readiness levels?
That's a great question. That's an incredibly great question. I think starting with the kids. I mean, that's where the success came from in Lexington was, the kids are learning about the environment in school and they want to do something about it. And they got very excited about addressing the waste in their own cafeteria. And that was really step one. That was ground zero for us in Lexington, where they started, okay, well, maybe we should start composting, backyard composting. And they started doing a little bit of that in the school cafeteria. And then they took it from there after they saw some successes from it. And I think the parents will often jump in and get more engaged when the kids are bringing it home to them as well. So I think that's one place to start. It is true, Lexington is a resource wealthy community. Right? We have capacity, we have a lot of staff, and that makes it easier for citizens to engage because we can support committees with administrative staff time and research and things like that. Not all communities have that, but there are also quite a few really great grants from DEP, and as a consultant, you could certainly help the communities you're working with to go after those grants. Smaller towns and less wealthy towns don't usually have grant writers or people who know how to seek grants. So that's an area where you really could add value. If they can win a little bit of money to do a mattress recycling program and it's, 1 day a year and everybody engages in it and they raise money for a local charity, for instance, those things tend to generate excitement and build on themselves.
Engaging other state reps. Or information sharing.
We do try. We try. So when we have events, we send them out to the entire building. But it's hard to explain how active the State House is. In any given day, there'll be 5 things happening at the same time. So we'll have an event, and sometimes we'll have 10 legislators show up. Sometimes we'll have 40. Sometimes we'll have 2. It can be a complete flop. You never quite know. But we do try to bring experts and community. We uplift communities that are doing great things. Like Hamilton started the first mandatory curbside composting program in the state, and we had the leader of that, a volunteer, come and talk to us and explain how she had started it in her community. And so we try to make that information available to all the reps and senators so they can learn from best practices in other communities.
Thank you.
Sure. In the back? I'm not surprised. Large companies and restaurants don't know either. Yeah. I was talking to someone at the Red Sox and he's like, yeah, we looked into it and we couldn't find a place to send the waste. I'm like, well, there's a ban. And he said, okay, well, you know what? You'll have to talk to my sustainability person. Hopefully the sustainability person knew that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and I think it's
So DEP still does not have the staff that it had back in the, don't quote me on this, but I think it was somewhere around the 2000s when staffs got cut significantly, and they're building back up, but their portfolio of responsibilities has grown dramatically in that same, 10, 15 years. So one of the things we do as part of our caucus is to weigh in on budget, and we're always writing in that we want to see more funding for DEP and more staff capacity for enforcement and for programming, grants to cities and towns, et cetera. So that is absolutely advocating for more enforcement is a piece of it, but more public education, right? So I know that DEP is doing a great job trying to get the word out to restaurants, and they really have upped their game, but there's always more that could be done. Letters to every restaurant once a year, maybe updating boards of health so they know, because boards of health have to provide annual licenses to the restaurants. And so if there was something that the Board of Health was conveying to their licensees each year, like, as you fill out your form for your renewal, tell us where your organic waste is going. Simple things like that would be very, very helpful. It's a relatively new ban, right? It used to be 1 ton, it's now at half a ton, and that's part of the learning process, but we can always invest more in public education. And I think having residents demand it, or just ask your restaurants, just next time you're in somewhere, just curious, if you happen to see the manager at the restaurant, where's your waste go? Just all of us really talking to our grocery stores and asking them for, better results.
So one last question.
I've got a question about, how tax policy can sort of affect all of these things, and, reducing the sales tax on reused items, for example, or depreciation and things like that, and whether that's part of the mix that you're considering.
Absolutely. The fee, if I do a single-use disposable fee, is essentially a tax, right? So that's a punitive one, but I would love to see down the road, we don't really have any significant reuse systems in place yet. So, but I like your idea of charging it a lower tax rate if it's a reusable system. I think that makes a lot of sense. But first we have to come up with an investment stream to actually help people build out these systems. There's software that needs to be further refined and developed to manage and control the reuse systems themselves. A lot of it's all barcoded now, and people have apps on their phone, and there's systems like the Clink system in Maine where the redemption centers have bags and it's all, barcoded, and those things cost money, just the infrastructure for the software. And then of course, buying the materials that are going to be reusable, and then wash facilities that we have to invest in, also costly. And then ultimately, if we get to sorting and refilling in a bottling system, that's, mega millions, right? So I don't know that we can start off with a tax system that will acknowledge those systems until the systems exist. But first, we have to have a financial stream to invest. And that's one of the reasons I get so excited about the opportunity of the bottle bill and, the expanded unused bottle deposit fees being something that would be a catalyst fund for investing.
I saw some additional hands, and because we are a very community-based organization and it's a small group tonight, I'm going to take a survey of what you all would like to do next. We've got, the wine and beer and snacks and so forth, and scheduled time to mingle. We've got to do a raffle and our wrap-up, but just want to take a survey of the room. If people would like, maybe 10 more minutes of questions, or if you'd like more time to be able to get up, stretch, use the bathroom, get snacks, and mingle and network. So people who are interested in having more time for questions, raise your hands. And people who are interested in mingling, snacks, getting up. So Andy, why don't you do a raffle and a couple quick announcements. But yeah, I want to respond to what you all are interested in doing in the space. So yeah, 10 more minutes of questions.
Some folks were frustrated, things couldn't move that seemed smaller this year, paint TPR, mattress, things like that. You mentioned there's a lot of competing interests in the building, obviously. Do you have a sense going into next session if there is a way to do those quicker incremental things, or does it need to be a bigger bill that gets everyone's attention and has a fuller conversation on waste?
Usually, we package the bills into something bigger. That is the trend in recent years. I don't know if we could start doing smaller bills. It'd be great if we could in some ways, but it seems like there's a leeriness of doing small bills because I think leadership doesn't want to see legislation that has unintended consequences, that has not received a full vetting from the public. And so when we do something bigger, we get much more input and awareness that this larger bill is moving through the system. I do think that waste bills never used to even get reported out favorably, and we're now starting to routinely report lots of them out favorably. There's definite growing awareness of the need to do something big on waste. And there's more energy from citizens, tremendous energy. That's something that's really changing. There's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. I think we're all a little deflated when we learned that, we were trained to do all this recycling, but recycle as much as we want, a lot of it still can't be used because the market isn't there, and it's very discouraging, right? So I think we all feel a sense of urgency, and I guess the only thing we can do is keep advocating, and it is helpful when all of you come to the State House for events, when you lobby your legislator, when you write to us. Those things really, really do matter, and join organizations like this one and others that are really tuned into the bills, that can tell you when something's coming and when we need your voice. But keeping my fingers crossed. I think that, as I said, we're doing energy siting reform imminently. We've done all the large carbon reduction planning bills, that the net zero by 2050, and we've done wind energy. We've done a lot of the big stuff. So I think people feel that waste is ripe for a bill this session. So we're hoping. Good question. We mostly just surveyed our members, but in the context of having had a couple of informational meetings and provided a lot of context from experts, that's part of what we do, is we educate the members. So it was pretty clear the three top priorities, what they had to be: the single-use plastics, the bottle bill, and the EPR bill. Those are sort of gold standard bills across the country now. And states like Maine have already passed their EPR bills, so we're behind. And so it wasn't that hard to arrive at the priorities, but the harder part is, can we get them across the finish line, right? We do get a lot of advice and guidance from experts in the field, and we bring those folks into the State House on a regular basis to talk to members, and that's how you're seeing everywhere people focusing on these strategies, because they know that they're the most effective. Go ahead. So we have somewhere between 6,000 to 7,000 bills a session. And it's really a matter of, I don't want to say we're always in crisis management, but there are big, big things that have to be dealt with. Hospital closures, for instance, and things that will bump out of the priority list, the waste-related items. And it's more a factor of the volume of policy work that we need to consider that really slows it down. But I would also say people think that, I don't think they have a sense of how important the administration is. You need a willing administration too, because we can pass all kinds of legislation, but if they don't want to run the programs, if they don't want to issue the grants, if they don't want to lead on these issues, it doesn't matter entirely what laws we would pass, right? I've seen administrations be given budgets and then not use them if that's not something they care to spend the money on. They just let the money revert to the general fund at the end of the session. So it's as much about working with the administration as it is about working with the legislature to get some of these bills passed. No, they're great. They're great. And they're relatively new though, right? She's only been in office for 2 years, and we've met with all of her cabinet secretaries, and they are very enthusiastic about this. And because we have an environmental bond bill coming in January, I'm very hopeful that some of these policies can be worked into that environmental bond bill. Back to the earlier question, we tend to package things into big bills because that's the easiest way to make things move forward. And it's not just about passing a policy, it's often making sure that there's funding to implement the policy. So a lot of times these policies might get attached to a budget or to a bond bill because that's the more effective way to do it, because you not only need a new policy for the bottle bill, but then you need to, invest in implementing it, right? You need this. There's multiple things that have to happen simultaneously. But also some of the opponents will be, the waste hauling companies may be against some of these things. The beverage companies always lobbied against increases to the bottle bill. There are, the redemption centers are trying to get the bottle bill passed. They need an increase in the handling fee. They're really struggling financially, and these are small businesses in all of our communities that really need this updated bottle bill. So they're lobbying to pass the bill, but the retailers associations tend to hate the bottle bill because they would be required to provide space in their stores for the collection of the materials, especially if we go to a universal return to retail, which is a gold standard for equity reasons, for people who don't have cars, low-income areas where people don't drive, for folks that, may be disabled or don't have access to a vehicle. You really need to make the redemption centers, all of the retail places that sell beverages, able to take back all of the containers. So they always push back on the bottle bill. So there's more people in the room opposed to the changes than you would think.
So I think in circular economy and just movements in general, leadership is so important, and corporations often are the ones to spur a movement. So is there any initiatives at the State House on life science, from packaging, from circular chemistry? I feel like if the life sciences cluster adopted circularity, like we'd have a major new leadership and activity in the state. So I'm just kind of curious if you could speak on that.
So life sciences is a major part of the economic development bond bill. And in Massachusetts, we've had 2 prior cycles of investment in life sciences and biotech. The first one was done under Deval Patrick. The second one was done under Governor Baker. And now Governor Healy's got a significant bond bill on the table. I kind of passed through that slide fairly quickly, but we are expected to pass that this fall. And there will be a lot of new money that will go out to companies for investing in these areas. It's called more broadly climate tech, but when I met with Secretary Howe, she assured me she felt that any of these types of circular economy things would be eligible activities under the bond bill that they are proposing and under the programs that they anticipate running. So there should be a lot of money that would be available. But you're right, we have to work more closely with industry, and that's one of the areas where we're often too siloed. I'm meeting with folks from Casella sometime this fall, and I try to, we meet with waste management and get around to different people, because in a perfect world, we wouldn't, reduce their profitability by taking the waste stream out. We would just add things that they have to collect. My dream world is a 4-bucket system where you have your waste, the smallest little bucket of all, you have your composting, a pretty good sized bucket, you have your recycling, and then you have your redemption. And that will be the biggest bucket. But somebody has to pick that up if we're going to do it in the US in a way that won't make consumers crazy, right? Because, in Europe, they're already doing a lot of, yogurt containers and things like that. It's not just the beverage. And if you think about where most of our waste is generated, it's in our food packaging. And it's not just our drinks. It's our pickle jars and it's all the things that we used to have in standardized containers. Those things could all go back. But somebody would have to collect them, or you'd be hauling around glass and plastic back to the grocery store. And I don't think our American consumers will put up with that. So whether it's Amazon or Casella or somebody else helping us design a system where the pickups and drop-offs happen seamlessly, we will definitely need industry to help us. And to your point about the chemical circularity and other things you could do with manufacturing in a different way, that's definitely things that folks at MIT and all of our great universities could help us develop.
Sounds like a great pathway for partnerships and like the Helix model.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Follow up like these questions because I found this an interesting question. To develop that system,
Yeah, I think sometimes EPR is kind of a linkage system, right? Because it asks people who are manufacturing the goods to be responsible for the take back. And when they have to take it back, then they have to consider, well, how can we package it in a different way that it's not going to be as wasteful or costly, because they're paying for the weight of, you know, capturing it again. And so we all have to recognize that we all have to be responsible for what we consume, and both the manufacturers and consumers have to participate in coming up with a solution. And we have to identify the opportunities for great job creation and sort of a more market-driven approach, because then it's not as scary, and I don't think you see people fighting it as much when they realize that we'll all benefit and be better off if things start, you know, costing us less because we're reusing them more, for instance. So we got a long way to go, but I do think opening the door to talk to industry more and educate consumers is going to be an important part of that. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.